If you look at what apps you use most on your phone, how many of them are social media? Are you happy about how much time you spend on them? I think probably the answer is no. Well, tech bosses at companies including Meta, TikTok and YouTube are being sued in the US over allegations that their products are meant to keep users hooked. Campaigners say it encourages addictive behaviour in adolescents, and that's resulted in both emotional and physical harms to them. That as the debate on banning social media for under 16s heats up here. Well, Bruce Daisley worked at Twitter, including as its vice president from 2012 to 2020, and joins us now. Bruce, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can I just start by asking quite a personal question? What is your daily screen time on your phone?
Oh, my days. I even turned off the screen time alert because I don't want to be reminded of it. I tend to view these things slightly more benign than maybe sort of the instinctive responses. I love following news. I love using social media to punctuate dull moments of my life. But yes, definitely, I am an addictive user of these platforms as much as anyone else.
And it sounds so addicted that you don't actually want to know how many hours you're spending on your phone.
Yeah, in the same way that I don't think if someone told you spent 2 hours reading the Sunday papers, you would view it in any way as a negative thing. You'd say, what a wonderfully carefree life I must have. And yeah, I don't want to have the data. But yeah, definitely, I use social media as much as the next person. I try not to make myself feel too guilty about it. But yeah, I'm as aware as everyone that these things maybe is something we want to limit at times.
So when you were at Twitter, was maximising screen time, making the app as addictive as possible, a priority?
To take one step back, it's really interesting the journey that tech platforms have been on. The reason why Google finds itself as one of the biggest companies in the world is that the founders of Google had a slightly different approach when they first set up the site. Their view was, we want to get people off Google as quickly as possible. And in comparison to the sites that came before it, the likes of Yahoo or Ask Jeeves, that tried to prolong your time on them, Google's discovery seemed to be that getting people off quicker made them come back more. That's certainly changed with social media platforms and tech platforms now. I think possibly one of the reasons why Twitter isn't one of the most used platforms in the world, or X isn't, is because it was slightly less accomplished at those things and didn't necessarily want to do some of the nefarious things that did increase your amount of time. So when I was working at Twitter, I left there before that guy took over. And when I was there, the average time that people were spending on Twitter was about 8 minutes a day, remarkably. If you compare that to some of the other platforms, though, Instagram was about an hour a day at that time, and TikTok was well over an hour. So social platforms do think about the time that we spend on them. They do try and optimize to ensure that that time is at a maximum. And they will look at every single point that might lead you to leave. So occasionally you'll see something like, if someone posts a link on some websites, on some of the social media apps, they quickly discover that is down ranked in the algorithm, and so they might say something like link in the comments rather than posting the link in the post.
Yeah.
And it's because these social apps go out of their way to try and maximize the time you spend rather than inviting you to leave the product.
Yeah, you mentioned nefarious tactics. Could you, I guess when you're using these apps, you are very attuned to identify them, and you mentioned a couple there. Can you tell us some others so that we might be able to sort of sense check when we're using social media what they are, which is why we're being lured in?
Yeah, so one of the first things that we all know about, or we hear about now, is that these products have an algorithm. And effectively, that is like a personalized bit of code that tries to understand what people are doing and second guess what other content to show them. So one of the first things that social apps will do is that if you post a new bit of content, they'll show it to 20 members of your closest friends and family to see if you watched it all the way through. The idea behind that is that if someone's got someone who's got an interest and a stake in the poster is watching it, then that's normally a good sign that that strangers will watch it. And so very quickly, they'll show it to your friends. If your friends don't watch it all the way through, it will never make its way to strangers and other people on the app. And so they just try and second guess what is hot content, what is going to pass the muster of fellow users, because they know if you've laid in bed and said, I'm going to watch 3 more TikToks or 3 more Instagram Reels, and you still find yourself 30 minutes later watching more, the more that they can make the content they put in front of you feel compelling, interesting, original, entertaining, they know that you're likely to hang around for longer and end up seeing more ads.
Yeah, we all do. Bruce, thank you. Bruce Daisley, the former vice president at Twitter. Listening to that conversation is Dr. Susie Davis, the GP mental health campaigner, who is a fierce campaigner for saying that children shouldn't be using their phones at school. And the Education Secretary today said that school should be a phone-free zone. Susie, listening to that analysis, we know that these apps are designed to keep us on there, but to hear it laid out, what was your reaction?
Well, I think it's fascinating, isn't it, to realise how addictive these apps are. But I think it goes so much more than that. We need to think that these tech bosses are spending huge amounts of money to make their apps as addictive as possible by hacking into our dopamine reward systems and also increasing the social validation that particularly young people are so desperate for. So I think it's actually more corrupt. I think it's darker than was maybe laid out, because these tech bosses know what they're doing. They know that they make money when our young people are spending their time and their attention on their apps. And they also know that it's not good for their well-being, but they're promoting them and the design features anyway.
Yeah, the government have launched a consultation as to whether they should be banning, like they have done in Australia, social media for under 16s. The Prime Minister has said on the record he's reluctant to ban apps for under 16s because he says what he's seen from his own children is that social media using things like Instagram has had an educational but also a social value of things like staying in touch with their friends. What do you think of the Prime Minister's case to say there is a positive side to social media that teenagers can be using?
Well, I would hope the Prime Minister is acting in the greater good for the country and for teenagers across the country. And whilst we all recognise there are some benefits of the online world and social media for connection for young people, what I'm seeing as a healthcare professional and what we're seeing increasingly in studies is that young people's mental health is being damaged. And I don't worry so much about the Prime Minister's children, but many of the children I care for in inner city Bristol. And again, evidence is showing it's the vulnerable children, the children who don't have any time restraints on their social media, who have unlimited access, who are having increasing mental health problems, self-harm, suicidal ideation, anxiety, depression. It's those children that I'm campaigning for, and I would urge the Prime Minister to act in the best interests of all children across the country and not just look at his 2 teenagers, but to take which I'm sure he is, but really to take a much, much bigger picture and to think actually how can we help teenagers across the UK have better mental health.